Okay, so very good day to everybody. This is transport and logistics systems. Today's class we'll discuss more specially about procurement logistics, okay, and how you'll go for purchasing, how you'll go for outsourcing, okay, especially about procurement logistics. Then we discuss about its management, okay, so distribution, inventory, and of course integrated logistics that we'll be discussing. So today's class it's more about procurement logistics, how the process goes on, okay. So this is especially for you, my dear students and young researchers, and you can reach me at dr.christoananth@gmail.com. So before beginning the session, once again, let me thank God for giving me this opportunity to deliver this useful session to share my knowledge among my fellow national, international participants, students, and young researchers. So in this class, we'll have a short intro towards procurement logistics. What is the effect? What is the impact that it is going to create? What are the product policies that you will try to maintain? What is the communication strategy with the procurement logistics? And in the second part, we'll go with procurement management. We'll go with contract negotiation. What are the issues if you encounter with the inefficient procurement? Okay. Then we discussed about the region of interest, especially with the case of materials as well. Okay. What are the relationship between procurement and of course logistics in the supply chain management? Okay. And what is the role of a logistics supply chain person, especially in this process? Okay. Then we calculate the procurement lead times, and of course we try to incorporate them because we just like the apps that you try to maintain, everything will be having some points, some reorder points, and how you will incorporate them. So that will be associating. And finally, how you try to implement the receiving best practices, especially into procurement. Okay. So already given the assignment 3 in the Google Classroom. Please complete them. Totally, there are 5 assignments that has to be completed in this subject, and at regular intervals, I'll be giving you some short videos to discuss the knowledge in our topics. Right. So we would have heard like different terms, even in intermodal transportation. We would have heard less than truckload. Okay, more than truckload. So we design about the capacity. Okay, like 20, 40. We design. Okay. So procurement and of course transportation management, all these terms generally refer to the supply chain management process, SCM. Okay. So maybe these conditions may be applied to all of the supply chain processes. Okay. So it's very, very important. These terms are very, very important. For example, like transportation management, if you can consider, it will be focusing on the journey of the products after manufacturing. Okay. So procurement logistics is something like you go for involving the purchasing of the manufactured goods and definitely for purchasing of the manufactured products, that you will encounter a very important term called as the procurement logistics. Okay. So this is the way that you will go for. Okay. So you are going to go for procurement of materials that is actually needed, that is actually required to manufacture these products. Okay. So according to this DHL, okay, the procurement logistics will be requiring like raw materials, supplies, operating supplies, replacement parts, purchased parts, and of course similar items. So these are all like the building blocks. Okay, so it's not like something it happens on its own. So you have to make further steps in order to gather this. So only after collecting this one, definitely you give the complete meaning for procurement of materials that is actually needed to manufacture the products. Okay. So in other words, you can say the supply chain, definitely you will have purchasing, shipping, organizing, and finally storing all these components here. Okay, so maybe if this flow like it's being inhibited or so maybe the production in the manufacturing centers, and maybe for the case of storing in a particular warehouse also, that would create a pressure, that would actually create a strain on the distributor and consumer. So you have to collect them careful enough. Okay, so this is the process. It goes from the supplier, okay, internal process, marketing, sales, and distribution, to the customer, the procurement, internal processes. This is connected to the third parties as well, okay, with the supplier and customer as well. So in the third parties, you will have logistics, shipment, the advice, consulting, manufacture, production, everything. The suggestions are given into. Okay, right. So where do these logistic providers come into play, especially with the procurement logistics? So every cost, this has its own impact. It is going to increase its value. Okay. So if the manufacturer must play like a 10% higher cost especially for the raw material, then definitely this impact will impact the customers as well. Okay, the end user who is going to receive that particular product. The type of the raw materials that is actually purchased, okay, will involve lengthy supply chains as well. Like we'll have like international transit of raw minerals, okay, from several sites to the manufacturing center. Okay, so what exactly is the specific logistic process that can be included? So it's nothing but how the company markets and of course the contract suppliers and vendors are actually interlinked, okay, in order to provide the supply. Okay, so the raw materials should be obtained from suppliers and of course transported to the factory. So everything should go as a chain, and of course like whatever cost that you are going to incur, that definitely will make an impact to the customers that you are going to buy this end product. Okay, so there's some product policy that is associated as well. Okay, so before going into that, like we'll go with the materials will go on to some process like customs and border protection, or maybe Department of Homeland Security. So it should go through these standards as well. And of course there is some paperwork, there is some organization that is required to operate these raw material supply chain. And the demand, especially by the purchasing manufacturer, is high enough. Okay, so definitely like what are all the processes that we incur, okay, in this procurement logistics, that should be split up into several steps. Okay, so that includes like product policy as well, where you have to maintain the document. Okay, so product policy is a part of this procurement logistics. Will have a wider picture of what you're going to develop even. So that includes like packaging materials, manufacturing details, and of course warehousing considerations as well. Okay, so this part of the procurement logistics is all about a fine print. Okay, the entire picture. Okay, so you once again like we'll have some question like does a provider of the procurement logistics offer auditing services, or maybe the ability to access additional resources, or maybe any other specific details? So, okay, maybe some will have access for the imports as well, making the whole supply chain to be more productive. Okay, but of course the terms and conditions should be laid down properly. Okay, so that even during the contract negotiation it should be fine enough to provide the standards, right? So, and then you'll have the communication strategy. Okay, so this is what determines the heart of the business. Okay, so this is what the company decides to make a product available. So maybe will it include multiple factories, or maybe regional distribution centers, promo centers, or maybe lengthy marketing advertisements? Everything will it include in the communication strategy? Okay, so in other words, like it will require materials from the procurement to make a product much more readily available as well, and of course to business partners or maybe entities as well. Okay, so where you have like DHL, it's a part of this procurement logistics. It can be the most important part. Okay, and communication is nothing but difference between the success and the failure of a new or maybe upcoming product. Okay, so only if you try to market the right way, then definitely you are going to enjoy the benefits out of it, and of course the customers also will have the trust on your product. Okay. Then you have purchasing strategy. Okay, it's all about procuring the raw materials especially needed for manufacturing. Okay, so whenever you say purchasing strategy, it should be optimized enough. Okay, so it should be able to collect raw materials from different suppliers. You are going to analyze the current market trends also, and you have to select and choose the best means as well. Okay, so everything should be there, low quality, fast enough, without sacrificing the quality. So that is the the magic formula for all of the products. Okay, so even like with regards to competition that you are going to encounter, okay, from each of the vendors, okay, that is going to keep the prices from high enough or maybe skyrocketing. Okay, so procurement logistics supply chain is going to include, okay, the actual work, okay, with the case of 3PL, 3 procurement logistics. That's the standard that we will maintain here. Then you have procurement management. So you are going to manage a company's incoming materials that is actually needed for manufacturing. Okay, so that includes like bids from the third party logistics. Okay, third party logistics as well. Okay, and then the creation and negotiation of the contracts, and of course you are going to hire the employees, and of course the drivers enough, and of course you will go for promotion like marketing and business professionals. So everything has a very crucial role to part. Okay, nothing to be ignored apart. Okay, and the whole procurement management team can be actually hired for the organizations or maybe corporations, especially for incorporating or carrying out these tasks. Okay, so you are going to work with a third party, you know, uh, logistics as well, where you are going to enjoy success, take the organization to the next higher level for a successful enterprise. Okay, and that's a common question. Like, is Amazon actually giving you a competitive price? Okay, with regards to each of the competitive vendors that is there in the market, is it still giving it? Okay, according to the standards. Okay, so if you can see, like shipping of raw materials or maybe processed materials is costly in and around the world. Okay, for example, if I have to transport from another country to here some important product, then definitely it will incur more cost. Okay, so that is where you are going to use a specialized logistics firm. Maybe it can act as a broker, okay, to manage this flow of materials, and of course you are going to minimize the cost. Okay, for example, let us take in the case a steel plant in China with a contract in Canada can actually ship the entire order, okay, to a storage space in US that is actually managed by the broker. Okay, so this is what brokerage helps enough. Okay, so maybe the customer is going to confirm the quantities, then definitely broker will be releasing these materials for shipment to Canada. So only after confirming the entire process starts. Okay, so shipping costs are also less, although there is additional cost for the broker services. But still, in order to business to go on, they will keep the cost to be less with regards to the customer's needs. Special training should be there, especially in procurement logistics. Like, we are going to create proposals, we are going to review contracts, and we are going to determine all the possible options. Okay, so the skills are about, especially about procurement, not necessarily that should include logistics, but procurement should be there. Okay, so regardless of the industry, the driving factor behind this procurement logistics is all about reducing the cost and of course minimizing the productive descriptions. Okay, so this is the process flow that you will encounter. Like, we'll try to create a purchase order, then we'll go with the RFID queues and so on. Okay, and then we'll go for analyzing and selecting the vendor. Okay, receiving and checking the invoice, receive goods of services. Okay, negotiate and support this procurement order, and of course authorizing the invoice, and of course pay vendor. So this is the entire process that it will go with the work. Then this is very very important, like minimizing the known risks. Okay, so this is very important. Like, the failure of parts, sometimes it will happen, sometimes we would not think about that it will happen. Okay, so that it can result in a complete stoppage of entire work. Okay, so minimum savings are more than lost in the, especially in the cost of wages and of course overhead with no production at all. Okay, so that's a level of risk even, okay, with all the decisions. And procurement logistics is definitely a method of minimizing the known risks. Okay, so if you are not going to manage the procurement properly, then you are going to have the risk about serious problems. Okay, so we'll have like shortages or maybe stockouts as well. We'll have like lost sales, reduced productivity, worst case scenario, production downtime. So these are all about like procurement is not managed well. Okay, then for the safety standards, it's advisable that you have to maintain a safety stock that you can deal with unforeseen events as well, critical times that is going to change in demand, and of course you are going to avoid the stock out. Okay, then you'll have dead stock as well. Okay, so which means that you purchase more goods than you actually require, and maybe they wind up turning into obsolete stock. Okay, so this also is going to create an unnecessary storage expenses. So this also is a problem. And also dependence on the suppliers. If you are going to depend too much on the suppliers as well, maybe like even like just in demand, so maybe you depend too much on the suppliers. So maybe if that doesn't help you, then it's going to incur the cost as well. Okay, so supplies are bought as they are needed. Okay, so any incident, especially with the suppliers, will definitely impact the entire procurement cycle. Then procurement with a warehouse management system. So you are going to have everywhere like procurement management, we think about optimized fashion, we think about well managed, organized. Okay, so organized and coordinated facility, definitely it's a must for uh, warehouse management system, and of course for the procurement logistics as well. So using a warehouse management system, you are going to manage the stock levels based on the JIT, just in time supply strategy. Okay, so for example, like you have ECWMS that will be having for the manufacturing module, that you will ensure like continuous supply of the raw materials for the production lines, and of course it is going to synchronize the supply and production buffers as well. And of course BOM, okay, that's how you try to closely monitor the status of the raw materials. Okay, so how much the exact quantity it is going to supply. Okay, so the module is going to manage the bill of materials. That's actually a complete list of all the raw materials that are needed, what are the parts that are needed, what are the tools that are needed to manufacture the entire product. Okay, so in this way, okay, we are going to connect to the MES, manufacturing execution system. Okay, not only the since warehouse operation, but definitely you are going to trace into all of the processes in the warehouse management system, especially with the procurement logistics. So using this one, you are going to have a real-time advantage, real-time visibility of all the items that you are encountering. Then you'll have like a relationship between procurement and logistics, especially in the supply chain management. So procurement is all about sourcing the goods like raw materials, components, finished goods and services, whereas if you take in the case of logistics, it includes transportation, warehousing, value added services, end to end services. Okay, extraction from the factory, okay, to the delivery, maintenance, return. Okay, so this is how you try to combine both procurement and logistics. So you are going to buy the logistics services and you are going to incorporate them in order to, you know, collect the materials needed to make a product, and of course transport enough. Okay, so the logistics is going to support the procurement, and that's the reason you call it as the procurement logistics, especially can be helpful in the supply chain management. As you can know, we discussed this already. Okay, in supply chain management, it includes logistics, supply chain strategy, supply chain planning, supply chain enterprises applications, asset management, procurement, that's a important part, and of course product life cycle management. So when it is going to actually require this logistics function, it needs, you know, proper planning and organizing. Okay, the transportation, of course, the storage of goods as well. Okay, so procurement logistics also include quality control, okay, of the purchased goods, inventory management, and of course value added services as well. Okay, so from the supply chain management, we'll go with raw materials, inbound logistics, goods in storage. Okay, so that goes into procurement, and of course in the operation management we'll go with manufacturing, outbound warehouse, outbound logistics to the consumer. Okay, so this is the process. And LSC, logistics supply chain. Okay, so both procurement, of course logistics, not like theoretical cases that we talk about, but it is in practice. Okay, it's a feet on the ground experience. Okay, so that is how you are going to need the logistics supply chain person to organize a full, you know, journey from the beginning to the end, from the tools that is actually needed to make a sound and a much more safer supply chain process as well. Okay, so the supply chain person is going to make some plans, okay, with the suppliers in order to support the manufacturing flow management process, and of course you are going to make new products enough. Okay, so with regards to, you know, obtaining products, of course materials, it includes like resource planning, supply sourcing, negotiation, order placement, inbound transportation, storage, handling, and of course quality assurance. So all these play a vital role in the logistics supply chain, especially with procurement. So this is the role of the logistics supply chain person. So maybe he or she will be concerned about movement of the finished product or maybe services to the customers. So in the case of logistics, we'll have customer service, inventory planning, like packaging, we'll go for transportation, we'll go for procurement, warehousing, information system, order processing. So everything will be the functions, okay, of the entire logistics life cycle, especially with procurement. Okay, so it's how you try to effectively manage this physical distribution process, and of course you are going to make the best efficient use of the marketing procedures. So we are going into how you calculate the procurement lead times and how you are going to incorporate them into order points. Okay, so you have to understand, you have to calculate the estimated lead points that will better make the use of the inventory process, and of course you are going to reduce the risk of the problems that we discussed, like stock out problem or maybe overstocking problem. Okay, so maybe if you use a management software, okay, or maybe if you maintain a partnership especially with the third party logistics, okay, there definitely you can set the automatic reorder point. So if you are going to calculate the reorder point, you need both the forecasting data and of course the estimated lead points. Okay, so we'll understand what is the lead time. It is nothing but the number of days between when you try to place a purchase order, okay, with your manufacturer or maybe supplier, and when you actually receive the particular product, okay, to the point that is actually ready for fulfillment. So accordingly, like, you will be calculated with points. Okay, so you get more points for your company or business, then definitely your scale of improvement would be higher. Okay. So once you have an understanding of the production lead times, then definitely you can actually calculate the demand during the lead time. Okay, so lead time demand is equal to lead time multiplied by the average daily sales. Okay, so that's how you go. Okay, right. So this is just a small example, like month, like January, February, March. Okay, what is the order amount? What is the delivery time? Okay, so accordingly you will be having the points that are associated. So next you'll go with optimizing the procurement logistics. Okay, so that's how you merge your procurement logistics with your logistics operations. So you have to optimize it. You have to source locally. Okay, so that can be made efficient enough. Okay, so you are going to optimize your procurement logistics. That is how you are going to optimize the last mile delivery. Okay, so if your network is diverse, wide enough, then definitely you can reduce the risk in the case of major delays or maybe disruptions in your production and of course manufacturing. And tracking the raw materials while in transit. Okay, so this is what depends on your e-commerce business, where you are going to track the raw materials if you try to manufacture, or maybe design the custom products, or maybe you are going to sell the raw materials to another business. So you are going to track the raw materials in transit. Okay, so that you will accurately calculate the production lead time that is associated, and maybe that's the time that is associated how you try to complete the entire procurement. Okay, so that's going to make a better estimate of how you are going to take time to procure the custom products. And finally, the receiving best practices that you are going to implement into procurement. Okay, so you are going to incorporate the WMS, warehouse management system. Okay, so that is how you are going to have a proper documentation before actually getting or maybe receiving the materials. Okay, so when you try to receive the materials, you have to count, you have to confirm, you have to store, and of course you have to file them. Okay, so that is how you are going to have a WRO label, warehouse receiving order label, and you are going to attach to each of the shipment, okay, with a barcode that is actually visible. Okay, so you're going to scan the shipment, okay, using the WMS, and you are going to pull up the data. Okay, make sure that the receiving inventory is accurate enough. Okay, and that has to be stored in the right place. Okay, so counting, confirming, storing, and filing them. Okay, so that actually reduces the inventory shrinkage. Assignment 3 for you: regionalisms and economic integration. Okay, the new protectionism. Okay, how you are going to work, how you are going to match, especially with the World Trade Organization data. So that with regards to logistics, you are going to submit them as a assignment. Okay, it's assignment number 3. It was already given in the Google Classroom. Please go through them. Still you have 2 more assignments, so totally 5 assignments.